It all started on the coldest evening of the year, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes your stomach twist from hunger and hopelessness. Aaliyah sat on the front steps of their broken-down home, her thin shawl doing nothing against the wind, her eyes staring into the dirt road like it might offer a way out. She was barely 20, untouched, unwanted, and unheard, living in a slum that didn't care who you were as long as you stayed invisible. Her father, a drunk with more enemies than coins in his pocket, stumbled out of the house shouting her name. "Aaliyah, come here, girl, got someone for you." She didn't move. She knew what that meant. Another stranger, another debt, another deal. He grabbed her arm roughly, dragging her toward a dusty shack at the end of the street where a man stood, tall, quiet, and still. He wore old, dull clothes like any poor man. His eyes were hidden behind dark glasses, his cane tapping lightly as he shifted his weight. He didn't look at her. He couldn't. He was blind. "This is Mr. Rayan," her father said with a crooked smile. "He's got no family, no sight, and no demands. He wants a wife. I told him you'd do. We'll be paid in food, and that's more than you've brought into this house in years." Aaliyah didn't cry. She didn't even speak. Her heart pounded, but she was too used to being silenced to protest now. Rayan said nothing. He just gave a polite nod. Something about the way he held himself, calm, confident. It didn't match the poverty written all over his clothes. That same night, with only 3 neighbors as witnesses and no celebration, Aaliyah became a wife. No white dress, no flowers, just a faded sari and a future she didn't ask for. She was sent to live in his tiny one-room house at the edge of the village, quiet, strange, and far from everyone she knew. Inside it was clean, too clean for a poor man. The furniture was simple but well kept. There was a softness in the air that felt off. Rayan moved like he knew every corner already, not fumbling, not struggling like blind people usually did. But Aaliyah stayed silent. She cooked, cleaned, and avoided speaking unless she had to. He didn't touch her, not once, not even on the wedding night. He stayed on the floor, gave her the bed, and never complained. "Do you hate me?" she asked once after days of silence. "No," he replied simply. "I just don't want to hurt you." She couldn't understand him. He didn't act like the others, no cruelty, no yelling, no hunger in his eyes, and yet he was hiding something. One evening, when he stepped out, she searched. Not because she was curious, but because something inside her felt off. She lifted a loose floorboard. Beneath it was a hidden box. And inside that box, cash. Bundles and bundles of crisp, untouched notes. More money than she had ever seen in her entire life. She gasped, her hands shaking as she dropped the lid. Why would a blind poor man have that much cash hidden under his floor? She didn't hear him come in. "Did you find what you were looking for?" he asked from the doorway, voice colder than she'd ever heard it. She froze. "What are you?" He walked forward slowly, his cane tapping in rhythm. Then he paused, turned his head toward her, and smiled, not the smile of a poor man, but the smile of someone who had seen too much and lost more. "I'm your husband," he said, "and that's all you need to know for now." Aaliyah didn't sleep that night. Her eyes were wide open, fixed on the cracks in the ceiling while her mind replayed every second of what had just happened. That money, his voice, the way he smiled like he wasn't afraid of anything. Her whole life she'd been surrounded by men who pretended, men who talked big and acted cruel. But Rayan, he was different. Calm, quiet, and terrifying in a way she couldn't explain. The next morning, she didn't speak to him. She couldn't. She moved around the house like a ghost, careful with every step, watching him out of the corner of her. But he moved the same way he always did, slow, measured, and blind. Was it all an act? She couldn't tell. She finally gathered the courage to ask him again that night. "Why do you have so much money?" He was sitting by the window, listening to the wind like it was whispering secrets only he could understand. "Because the world owes me," he said softly, "and I don't forgive easily." That answer chilled her more than the cold floor under her feet. "Are you dangerous?" she whispered, barely able to breathe. He turned his face slightly toward her. "Not to you," he said, "unless you try to become someone you're not." She didn't know what that meant, but the warning was clear. Stay quiet. Stay small. Days passed. Aaliyah began noticing more things. His phone, sleek and new, was nothing a poor man should own. His clothes, though plain, were always clean, almost tailored. Once she saw a delivery boy bring a parcel. Expensive. Cologne, foreign chocolate, and a black envelope with a golden seal. The man bowed as he left. She never saw him beg, never saw him buy food from the market like the rest. Yet the fridge was always full, and there was never a shortage of anything. Who was he? Her curiosity was growing, but so was her fear. There was something dark in the silence he carried. He had the kind of presence that made people lower their voices and avoid eye contact, even blind. One day she ventured outside for a breath of fresh air, and an older woman from the village stopped her. "You're the blind man's wife?" the woman asked, peering closely at her. "Yes," Aaliyah said hesitantly. "Strange, that man. He doesn't talk to anyone, doesn't need anyone, just moved here a year ago, pays rent early, never asks for anything. But—" The woman leaned in. "We've seen cars, black ones, fancy ones, waiting for him late at night. He walks out with his stick and he comes back alone, but nobody knows where he goes." Aaliyah's heart raced. That evening she decided to follow him. She waited until nightfall, pretended to sleep, and when she heard the familiar tap of his cane leaving the house, she slipped out barefoot, heart pounding in her chest. She trailed behind him, keeping her distance. He walked slow but steady, straight down the empty road out of the village. After half an hour, just as her legs were growing numb, she saw it, a black SUV. He walked right up to it. The back door opened and he got in. No hesitation, no struggle. And the driver called him sir. Aaliyah dropped behind a tree, her knees buckling beneath her. What the hell had she gotten into? He wasn't poor, he wasn't helpless, and he definitely wasn't who he claimed to be. She stumbled back home, shaken to her core, her chest tight with panic. She was married to a stranger, a liar, maybe even a criminal. She tried to act normal when he returned, but she couldn't meet his eyes, or rather, his glasses. And when she turned to walk away, he said something that froze her in place. "Next time you follow me," he said quietly. "I won't be so kind." Aaliyah barely made it through the next few days. Her hands shook every time she cooked, and her heart jumped whenever Rayan moved suddenly or spoke her name. He didn't mention that night again, didn't bring up the fact she had followed him, didn't raise his voice or show any anger. But the silence between them had changed. It was no longer empty. It was threatening. She tried to leave once, packed a small bundle before dawn and stepped outside the door, feet trembling, breath short. But he was already sitting on the porch, as if he knew, as if he'd been waiting. "I don't keep you here," he said without looking at her. "You're free to leave." Hope sparked in her chest for one brief moment. "But," he continued, voice sharp now, "once you walk away, you'll be walking into a storm. You won't survive. I've protected you, fed you, given you a place where no one touches you. You leave now and I won't save you next time." She dropped the bundle. That day, she sat on the floor in the corner of the room, knees pulled to her chest, staring at nothing. Who was this man? Why did he hide like a beggar in a village while driving away in cars meant for kings? Why her? Why marry someone like her? She had no answers. Until the letter came. It arrived in the same kind of black envelope she'd seen. Before, gold seal, thick paper, no return name. It was addressed to Mrs. Aaliyah Rayan. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single line. "You are now one of us. Keep your mouth shut." That was it. No name, no explanation. She didn't show it to Rayan, but he knew. Somehow he always did. That night, after dinner, he spoke without facing her. "There are things about me you'll never understand. Things I did before I lost my sight. Things I still do even now." She swallowed. "What kind of things?" "Things that kept me alive." His tone was final. Cold. But there was a strange, sadness underneath. Later that week, he handed her a phone, brand new, shiny, expensive. "If I ever don't come back," he said, "you call this number, memorize it, never save it, never speak of it, not even in your sleep." "Are you in danger?" she asked, staring at him. He turned toward her, and for the first time since their marriage, he took off his glasses. His eyes were clouded, blind, yes, but sharp in a different way, like he could still see more than anyone with sight ever could. "I've always been in danger," he said, "and now so are you." That night, Alia couldn't sleep. Something was coming. She could feel it, like the weight of a storm pressing down on the roof. She didn't know whether to run or hold on tighter. One thing was clear. Her husband wasn't the helpless man her father sold her to. He was something else entirely, and she was now part of a game she never signed up for. The next morning, the village woke up to news that one of their wealthiest businessmen had been found dead in the city. His house ransacked, body full of bruises. No signs of forced entry, no clues left behind. Rayan didn't flinch when he heard. But that night, as she pretended to sleep, she heard him whisper into the phone in a voice she'd never heard before, colder than death. "Tell the others." Message received. After that ominous night, the air in the small, worn-down house felt heavier than ever, as though it were filled with secrets too dark to whisper in daylight. Every morning, Alia woke with a knot of dread in her stomach, wondering if today would be the day when the shadows closed in for good. The once quiet room began to echo with the rhythm of her racing heart and the silent ticking of a clock that seemed to count down moments of doom. Rayan's behavior grew more unpredictable. He now left the house for long periods, sometimes disappearing into the narrow, winding roads of the village, while his steps took him beyond the familiar sights. The few times he returned, his eyes, clouded yet piercing, appeared even more haunted. As if the toll of secrets was etched deeper into his soul, Alia began to notice changes in him, a subtle shift in his mannerism, and the way his tone would fluctuate between distant calm and desperate anxiety. Every time he left, she clutched the new phone tightly. Its glow in the dark was a constant reminder of the elusive number he had so reluctantly given her, a lifeline that might one day save or condemn her. In the stillness of one particular afternoon, when the village was wrapped in a deceptive calm and the blazing sun lay low on the horizon, she decided to venture out on her own. The risk was enormous, but the need to know more about Rayan, the man she had grown to both fear and pity, overpowered her caution. Walking along the dusty paths with her eyes downcast, she sought any clue that could explain the mysteries he concealed. Her heart pounded as she passed by the small market. Whispers of the villagers trailed behind her like ghosts, murmurs of a man with secrets, the whispers always laced with a mix of admiration and suspicion. In a dim corner of the marketplace, an old friend of her father, who rarely spoke, approached her slowly. His face, creased with the trials of many years, held a mix of sympathy and worry. "Alia," he began, his voice barely more than a sigh, "that man you married is caught in a web that reaches far beyond this village. There are names behind him that should not be spoken aloud." He leaned in, and with a tremor in his voice said, "They say he once belonged to a powerful circle, a network of business and crime that controls more than just money." The word struck her like a clap of thunder. A network? Business and crime? The puzzle pieces of her life kept sliding into place, revealing shapes that threatened to crush her under their weight. She could not imagine that the same man who offered her protection and silent guidance could hide such dangerous ties. Yet every detail, the luxury phone, the unexplained cash under the floorboard, the black SUVs waiting in the night, pointed to a life that was worlds apart from the poor blind man the village thought they knew. That very evening, as twilight seeped into the worn walls of their one-room home, Rayan returned with haste that was uncharacteristic of him. His arrival was abrupt, almost frantic. The door closed with a thud behind him, and his usual calm was replaced by a tension that vibrated in the air. He sat near the narrow window, hands trembling on his cane, his lips pursed in thought. For a long time he did not speak, and the silence was thick enough to choke her. Finally, he spoke in a strained, low tone. "There are men who believe that secrets are a currency, Alia. Men who trade them like goods on the open market. And I am deep in debt." His admission sent a shockwave through her. The notion of debt was no stranger in their impoverished life, yet the context of this was far removed from the struggle she had known all her life. It was as if, in this murky world, everything she had been forced into was a payment, a trade, for her freedom, for his silence. "What kind of debt?" she asked quietly, the urgency in her voice betraying a mix of fear and determination. Rayan's eyes, though blind, seemed to focus as he replied, "One that will cost us our lives, if we do not settle it soon." He paused, the admission hanging in the air like a warning. "They want something from me, something I failed to deliver, and if you ever hear of something coming for us, do not look for me. I will be long gone." The gravity of his words left Alia numb. The darkness of his revelation was deeper than any night she had ever endured. She realized with a sinking heart that the life she was forced into was not just defined by poverty or secrets. It was a battlefield where each day was marked by a struggle against unseen enemies, and each moment was a gamble with fate. The number he had given her became her only tether to a world she barely understood, a lifeline that might one day lead her to the truth or to her end. As the night wore on and the house filled with a suffocating silence, Alia clutched her shawl, trying to still the tremors in her body. The taste of fear was bitter on her tongue, mixed with a resolve that she could not let fear control her fate. With determination setting her mind on fire, she knew that soon she would have to confront not only Rayan's dark past, but also the dangerous present that was looming like a storm on the horizon. The following days were filled with tension, so thick even the wind outside seemed too afraid to blow. Rayan moved less and spoke even less than usual. He rarely left the house now, and when he did, he returned looking more drained, more haunted. He stopped sleeping through the night. Alia would often wake to find him sitting by the window, unmoving, staring into nothing as if trying to see a past that refused to let go. She tried to ask questions, but he'd only give short, vague answers. It was like he was burying something deeper and deeper, hoping it would never rise again, but she could feel it. Something was coming, and whatever it wasn't far. Then came the phone call. Not on her phone, on his. He answered in the other room, but the walls in their home were thin. She heard enough. "She's your weakness." A pause. "You brought her into this, Rayan. You know the rules." Another pause. "You either clean up or someone else will." He didn't reply right away. Then finally, in a voice so low, she had to strain to hear it, he said, "I'll handle it." That was all. Alia's blood turned to ice. She didn't know who they were or what they wanted, but the message was clear. She was a target. And Rayan, the man who never touched her, who never hurt her, might be the one ordered to make her disappear. When he came back into the room, his face was unreadable, his movements slow and deliberate. "You heard," he said quietly. Alia's throat went dry. She nodded. He didn't look angry. He didn't look ashamed either. He looked resigned. "I told you there are debts, and I told you they come with consequences." "What do they want?" she asked, her voice trembling. He stared at the wall. "Control, loyalty, silence. And if they don't get it, they kill. They don't negotiate. They don't warn twice." Alia could barely breathe. "Then why involve me? Why marry me at all?" He turned sharply at that. "Because I thought I could protect you. I thought I could hide you behind a simple life away from their eyes, but someone told them. Someone sold us out." Her heart sank. "Who?" "I don't know," he said, "but I will find out. And when I do, it won't be a clean death." There was something about the way he said it. Not just like a man who had killed before, but like one who knew exactly how to do it without remorse. That night she didn't sleep, and neither did he. By morning, the village buzzed with rumors. A house nearby had burned down. No survivors. The police called it a gas explosion, but the whispers said otherwise. People said a man in a black suit was seen walking away just minutes before the fire. They said he wasn't blind. They said he smiled. Aaliyah couldn't ignore the gnawing thought in her mind. Was it Rayan? Was that how he handled betrayal? Later that day he handed her a small black bag. "Pack," he said. "We're leaving tonight." "Where?" "Somewhere they won't find us. Not for a while, at least." She hesitated. "And when they do?" He looked her in the eyes, and for the first time since their marriage, he touched her cheek, gently, almost like he was afraid she'd break. "Then I'll give them something they never expected." She didn't ask what that meant. She didn't want to know, not yet. But she packed her things, heart pounding with every item she folded. The road ahead was unknown, the threats growing clearer, and her husband was no longer a mystery. He was a man on the run from a world he helped build, and now she was running with him. They left the village under the cover of darkness. No goodbyes, no footprints left behind. Just silence and a long winding road that led them deeper into nowhere. Rayan drove this time. That's right, drove. His hands moved with ease on the wheel, no hesitation, no signs of blindness. Aaliyah sat in stunned silence, clutching her bag like it might protect her from the truth unraveling in front of her. "You're not blind," she finally said, voice dry as dust. "I was," he replied, eyes fixed on the road. "Not anymore." She stared at him. "How is that even possible?" "There was a surgery, a year ago. I kept it hidden." "But why hide it from me?" she snapped. "From the beginning you let me believe—" "Because people don't talk to the blind," he cut in, his voice razor-sharp. "They talk around them. They forget them. They underestimate them. That blindness gave me time, safety. It was a weapon, not a weakness." Aaliyah's mouth went dry. He hadn't just lied. He had strategically played everyone. They drove for hours until the sun began to rise over the horizon, casting blood-orange streaks across the sky. Eventually, they reached a secluded house on a hilltop, far from the eyes of any neighbor. It was massive, not just bigger than their old shack, but palatial, and yet it felt cold, like it had been waiting too long in silence. "This was mine," he said, "before everything, before I vanished." "You owned this?" she asked, stepping out slowly. He gave a humorless smile. "I owned a lot more than this, land, businesses, half the city." "And now?" He looked at her then, truly looked. "Now I just own my regrets." Inside, the house was spotless, guarded, too perfect, and waiting for them was a woman Aaliyah had never seen before. Tall, poised, beautiful, in an expensive, icy kind of way. "Rayan," she said with a smirk, crossing her arms. "So you finally brought her?" Aaliyah stiffened. "Who is she?" Rayan didn't answer. The woman stepped closer, her heels tapping like a countdown. "I'm someone who used to matter to him before you." Her voice held venom, and her eyes scanned Aaliyah like she was dirt on her shoe. "You have no idea what world you've stepped into, girl. You think marrying a man like Rayan makes you strong? You're a pawn. Always were." Aaliyah's stomach twisted. "Why are we here?" she asked Rayan, not bothering to hide her growing panic. "Because this is where the betrayal began," he said grimly. "Someone here sold me out, someone I trusted, and I'm done playing the fool." The woman laughed bitterly. "Still chasing ghosts, are you?" He ignored her and turned to Aaliyah. "I didn't bring you here to hide anymore. I brought you to see the truth." That night everything cracked wide open. Rayan showed her documents. Photos, bank transfers, a list of names. He used to be part of a private circle of underground investors, men who owned everything from real estate to politicians. But someone from within betrayed him, leaked his secrets, sabotaged his business, tried to kill him. That was when he disappeared, faked his blindness, went underground. It was all survival. "But why me?" she asked again. "Why did you marry me of all people?" He looked at her then, raw and vulnerable for the first time. "Because your father owed them money. They were going to kill him. I paid his debt under one condition: he give me something they'd never expect. A wife who didn't belong in their world. A ghost, someone clean. So I was just a trade, she whispered, heart sinking. No, he said, stepping closer. You were my way out. And now you're the only thing keeping me human. Aaliyah didn't know whether to cry or scream. She had been sold, used, and lied to. But something inside her had changed. She wasn't the same scared girl who sat on the steps of her father's shack anymore. She looked Rayan in the eye and said the one thing she hadn't dared to before. Then help me destroy every last one of them. Aaliyah stood in the center of the lavish house, no longer feeling like a stranger. She was born into poverty, forced into a marriage, lied to by the only man who showed her kindness. But now she was part of something bigger. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about taking control. Rayan watched her closely. He saw the shift in her eyes, the fear turning into resolve, the silence morphing into quiet rage. You're not the same girl I married, he said. Neither are you, she replied without blinking. They began planning the next move. Rayan had kept files, real names, coded accounts, voice recordings, everything he'd quietly gathered over the years while pretending to be blind. The people who ruined him weren't ghosts anymore. They had addresses, schedules, weaknesses, but the woman from before, the one who called herself someone who used to matter, was still in the house, and she wasn't done talking. Her name was Samira, and the venom in her smile was never far behind. You really think you two can take on them? She said one morning over coffee she didn't drink. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and frankly out of your depth. You're a street girl, Aaliyah. You don't know this world. I don't need to, Aaliyah replied calmly. I just need to end it. Samira scoffed, but Rayan interrupted. She stays. For now. We may need her. Aaliyah didn't trust her, not for a second. And that night, her instincts were proven right. While Rayan went out to meet a contact, Aaliyah caught Samira sneaking into the locked study. She followed, her silently barefoot, her heartbeat like thunder in her chest. She heard the whisper, Yes, he's alive, and the girl knows everything. Aaliyah stepped into the doorway. Tell them I'm ready. Samira spun around, startled for the first time. You have no idea what you're doing, girl. No, Aaliyah said, walking in slowly. But I know what betrayal looks like now. She didn't scream, didn't fight. She simply grabbed the phone from Samira's hand and smashed it against the desk. You sold him out once, she said coldly. You won't get the chance to do it again. Rayan returned just in time to see Aaliyah dragging Samira out by the wrist. When he saw the broken phone, his eyes darkened. How much did she tell them? Enough, Aaliyah said, but not more than we already guessed. He looked at Samira with a mix of anger and disappointment. You used to be loyal. She smiled sadly. Loyalty doesn't feed hunger, Rayan. Money does. He turned to Aaliyah. We need to move, now. They fled that night with only what they could carry. But this time they weren't running from the shadows. They were walking straight into them. Their destination, a city 2 states away, where Rayan's former partner, Ibrahim Qureshi, now operated with full control over the empire they once built together. Ibrahim was the one who orchestrated Rayan's downfall, the one who ordered the betrayal, and the one who never saw Aaliyah coming. On the way, Rayan briefed her. Ibrahim thinks I'm still in hiding. He doesn't know I can see, doesn't know I've been collecting everything. He trusts that Samira kept me leashed. Aaliyah stared ahead. Then let's give him a surprise. Once in the city, they rented a small apartment under fake names. Aaliyah learned quickly how to handle encrypted files, how to speak in code, how to walk into a room like she owned it, even when she didn't. Rayan watched her with silent pride. She wasn't just adapting, she was becoming lethal. They sent Ibrahim a package. Inside was a photo, the two of them standing in front of the house on the hill, arms crossed, eyes locked on the camera. No words, just a timestamp. The message was loud and clear. We're back, we remember, and we're coming. Within 24 hours, Ibrahim's people began to search for them. Within 48, Aaliyah hacked into one of his shell accounts and redirected funds to an anonymous charity. By day 3, she had a bounty on her head. But it didn't scare her, because for the first time in her life, Aaliyah wasn't someone's pawn. She was the player. They knew the final move had to be loud, permanent. Rayan had spent years collecting evidence: bank fraud, blackmail, murder contracts, offshore accounts, everything tied to Ibrahim Qureshi and his network. But information wasn't enough anymore. These people didn't fear the law, they owned it. They needed something messier, something public. They set the trap in motion during an elite gala that Ibrahim was hosting, a night of suits, wine, and gold-plated lies. No one suspected a thing. Aaliyah, dressed in a sleek black gown she never imagined herself wearing, entered the hall like she belonged there. She had learned to walk like the rich, speak like them, but her heart beat like war drums. She wasn't there to fit in. She was there to end it. Rayan entered separately, disguised under a sharp tuxedo, dark shades still over his eyes, cane in hand, playing the role of the blind billionaire once more. The irony wasn't lost on them. He had started this journey blind to betrayal. He would end it pretending to be blind to his enemies. The moment came when Ibrahim took the stage, smiling like the devil dressed in silk. To power, to growth, to unity, he said, raising a glass. That's when the lights cut out, and a video began playing on the large screen behind him. The room went silent. There he was, Ibrahim, caught in grainy footage, threatening a business rival, discussing bribes, and worst of all, admitting to orchestrating Rayan's downfall. The crowd gasped. Phones came out. The press was already there. Ibrahim turned pale, and in that silence Aaliyah stepped forward. "No one will remember your wealth," she said, voice echoing through the hall. "They'll only remember the day a poor girl you tried to erase brought you down." Security tried to grab her. Too late. The authorities, real ones Rayan had paid handsomely, were already at the door. Ibrahim was arrested on the spot. But not everyone in that room was part of the takedown. Some were loyal to him. Some were still on the payroll. Gunshots rang out as chaos erupted. Screams filled the hall. Aaliyah ducked behind a pillar, heart racing, eyes scanning for Rayan. He found her first, shielded her, pulled her toward the emergency exit. But just as they reached the doors, a single bullet caught Rayan in the shoulder. He didn't cry out, just clenched his jaw and said, "Go." "No," she hissed, dragging him with all her strength. "You don't leave me, not now, not after everything." They made it out, bleeding, breathless, alive. The headlines exploded by morning. Business tycoon exposed in multi-billion. Crime web. Anonymous whistleblower revealed as wife of betrayed partner. Rayan was hospitalized but recovered. The bullet didn't kill him. It gave him a second chance. They disappeared again, this time on their own terms. Weeks passed, then months. No more running, just quiet. They moved to a small town in the hills. No wealth, no servants, no games. Just peace. One morning, while folding laundry under the soft mountain sun, Aaliyah looked up to find Rayan standing in the doorway with 2 mugs of tea. He still limped from the wound, still wore the same glasses. But there was no longer any need to pretend. "You regret it?" he asked, handing her the cup. She smiled, a rare one, warm and real. "Only that I didn't see you sooner." He sipped. "I saw you from the beginning, even when I was blind." They stood together in silence, the poor girl and the blind man, both no longer what the world believed them to be. She had been sold like property. He had been hunted like prey. But together, they had built something no one saw, coming. Not a kingdom, not an empire, just truth. And in the world they came from, that was the most dangerous power of all.